The Hindus say that Brahman is the only reality, everything else is an illusion. So you could take that statement and you could put in different words, and it is basically, it's the same truth that is being talked about here. So you could take that statement and say, joy is the only truth. Because Brahman is just another name for joy, which is just another name for light, which is just another name for love, which is just another name for consciousness. It's all the same. So you could say, joy is the only truth. All other emotions are illusory. So whenever you feel joy, 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 deep joy, joy for no reason, joy at everything. Everything becomes joyful. Everything becomes joyful. A sunny day becomes joyful. A stormy day becomes joyful. A rainy day becomes joyful. A hot day becomes joyful. A cold day becomes joyful because you're pure joy. Whenever you feel that joy, for whatever reason, if the spirit has been graceful enough to you and you woke up one day and you're just feeling joy for no reason, that's it, baby. You're living in truth. That's the truth. That's what the Hindus were talking about when they said Brahman is the only truth, all else is illusion. And so all the other emotions, and I'll explain to you my experience last night, because if you watched the video before this one, I was hanging out in the jungle and at night, and I said that I was feeling, I need to cry, I need to release, I feel separate, I feel this sense of separation, the original wound, the original self-inflicted wound of separation, the pain that comes from that, and I was feeling that, and so I needed to cry. So I cried for about an hour, actually. I used Sufi music to magnify what I was already feeling and to get the tears and release the crying out. And now that crying, that feeling of sadness, that's an illusion. That's not real. That's not a real, that is not a real, the only real emotion, which is not even an emotion, it's just it's who you are, it's a state of being, is joy. So all other emotions is illusions. So that crying that I was feeling, it's because I'm feeling, I'm in the illusion. I feel separate. So that's an illusion because separation is an illusion. And that causes me sadness. And so that sadness needs to be released. Because if you release all the emotions that you have, all the sadness, the grief, the anger, everything that you feel is blocking you, nothing remains except for joy. Nothing remains except for joy. And that becomes the work. The work becomes to purify yourself, to let go, to reduce and reduce and reduce until all action arrives at non-action, as Lao Tzu says in the Tao Te Ching. So by reducing, let go of the emotions, invite the tears. See, I was feeling those tears. I was feeling like I need to cry because I had done an LSD trip a few days ago, and I felt like God, and I came down from that feeling back into the consciousness that I currently have in this body and its day-to-day activities, and I felt separate. And that sort of dichotomy, that cognitive dissonance between the feeling of being whole, being fulfilled, being totally at one with everything, totally fulfilled, and in the contrast of just being good old Saeed, just good old me, just caught in the web of illusion and caught in his mind, that caused some pain. That because that's the sadness of not being whole, not being one. And so that needed to be released. That really needed to be released for me to be joy again, which is something I'm experiencing today, just naturally, because I let go of the illusion, which is the illusion of separation. So I let go of the illusion of sadness by letting it go, by just letting it go, by crying it out. And then underneath that is just unexplainable joy, which is exactly what I experienced this morning, what I'm experiencing today. Unexplainable. It has no reason. I mean, it could have been the shittiest weather and I still would be pure joy today. Feeling really just joy, pure joy. But I really had to let go of that. I really had to let go of the illusions. I had to let go of the emotion, of sadness, of feeling separate, feeling bad for myself and, you know, all that. So I had to really let it go. And I was crying for an hour. And I really encourage you to do the same. I really encourage you to let go of all your emotions if you want to experience yourself as pure joy, as Brahman, as your true self. Your true self is joy, it's pure joy. So that's the work. You see, that's the work. You want to provide yourself with safe space to be able to release, to be able to let go. The more and more you let go, the more and more you become self-realized. Self-realization is simply being who you are. That's what self-realization is. And so that's why Lao Tzu says in the Tao Te Ching, to obtain Tao, which is just another name for joy, it's all the same. To obtain Tao, no, he says to become learned, gain daily. So if you want to learn to be in this world, you know, learn. Keep adding, add to your resume. You know, your next job, they'll look at your resume and they'll be like, damn, now you've done this and that. Look at you. You really have been productive. Here, we're gonna hire you. So keep adding, add baggage, add emotional baggage. It makes you look more of a complex human being. You know, let's take you in here and study you. You're a complex human being. You know, you have all these emotions, you have this interesting storyline that happened to you that caused you to feel anger and grief. I mean, you become really complex. You become an interesting person in the world. So keep adding to your emotional baggage. It'll make for a good movie, right? I mean, if you look at all the characters in the movies, they're all like really complex, right? Really emotional. Sometimes they're laughing, sometimes they're crying, sometimes they're this and that. So keep adding emotional baggage, my sweethearts. Keep adding them because it'll make you an interesting person. It'll make you really interesting in the world. You see, to become learned, in other words, to be successful in this world, gain daily. Keep gaining. Put on more emotion, put on more sadness, more anger, more grief. Store it in there. Really do. One day you're gonna be in a movie. Your storyline's gonna be in a movie. So to become learned, gain daily. To obtain Tao, which is so simple. It's so simple and it's so unspecial, but it's the best thing ever. To obtain Tao, reduce daily. Reduce and reduce and reduce until all action comes to non-action. Then when nothing is done, nothing is left undone. So when you reduce and reduce and reduce, you become Tao, you become joy. Very simple. It's like a child. Very simple. Not a complex being with all these, you know, twists and turns. Just a simple being. A being of joy. A being of play. A being of creativity. And that's the work, folks. That's the work. So when you feel an emotion coming up, release it. You know, the faster and quicker you can release it, the more joyful you can be. And it's a process. It's a process. It really is a process. Life has a lot of ups and downs. And so you have to be very mindful of the mind-body complex that is you, that you're experiencing. It's not you, it's what you're experiencing. You're experiencing a human being with a mind-body complex. They work together. And you want to take control of the mind because mind creates matter, right? Until then, there's some purification to do until you've gotten full control over the mind, at which point you're pure joy, right? You're pure joy at that point. You've got to work with the current programming and the current, informational field because everything is information. So there's certain information inside of you right now from childhood traumas, from, again, the original trauma is the trauma of separation, a self-inflicted wound by God to experience the illusion of separation before coming back into oneness. So Basically all sadness leads to that. So if you've just been dumped by your wife, by your husband or something, and you feel really down, that's because that actually the root of that is the feeling of separation from God, from the oneness. So if you want to go straight to the source, that's the real issue here. That's why you're crying, and that's why you're feeling sad. And so you release these emotions, you release these illusions, because if they stay stored inside your mind-body complex, they just keep you stuck in the illusion. They keep you bought into it. Like if you have a childhood trauma, for example, you have been, let's say you have your dad or your mom. Let's say your dad has really was a drunk and he just left. He just took off the scene, right? And say you're a woman, and say you're just feeling like you have been abandoned by your drunken dad. Like you really just feel down, right? You just feel down. Like it's a storyline. There's a story inside here that says that creates more sadness, more crying. So there's more information stored here because of a story in the past that says my dad abandoned me. Okay, and that causes emotions, that causes tears that get stored in the mind-body complex, keeps you stuck in the illusion, keeps you sucked in, because you're really bought into the story. You think you're the story, you think you're the guy or the girl that grew up whose mom abused him, whose dad abused him. Keeps you stuck. Now you release the emotions, you release the crying, you release it, you really go deep sobbing. I'm talking about deep sobbing. I was sobbing for an hour straight. Okay, deep sobbing from the belly. And once you let go of that, then you let go of the illusion. It's no longer sucking you in, because now, if you keep letting go of the emotion, you're not as identified with the storyline of that little boy or that little girl whose parents have been very unkind to him and her and whatever they did to them, right? You're no longer identified so much with that story. Now you can be who you are, as pure joy, as Brahman, as consciousness. So just remember that. Remember that. Anger is the superficial emotion which covers sadness. Sadness is the superficial emotion which covers the truth, which is joy, which is that you're pure joy. That you are pure joy. And there is no way around it. And that is who you are, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, whether you want to admit it or not. You're pure joy. Joy is the only truth. All other emotions are just illusions. And joy isn't even an emotion, it's a state of being. It isn't. I say it isn't an emotion because emotion, emotion is energy in motion. It's energy moving. And Brahman, which is pure joy, is actually still. So your joyness is still. It's not even an emotion, it's still. So it doesn't matter. A sunny day, wow, look at a beautiful sun. Oh, look at these beautiful trees, your joy. So that's gonna be nice. It's a cloudy day. Oh man, look at these clouds. Oh wow, look at these shapes they're doing, right? Oh, it's a snowy day. Oh wow, look at these snowflakes. Look at these snowflakes. Oh look, I could pretend like I'm smoking, and you play with it because you're pure joy. It doesn't matter what's happening. The emotion, the energy in motion around you doesn't affect that pure joy. So the pure joy isn't even an emotion. It's a state of being. It's totally a state of being. It's nothing to do with an emotion, actually. So, final saying, again, just to drill it into your mind. I'm doing this brainwashing thing on you. Joy is the only truth. All other emotions are illusory. So the sooner you could reduce them and just release them and just release them from the system, the quicker you could realize yourself as that pure joy. Thank you to all the Patreons for your support on this channel. If we get a lot of people in the future, I'm already looking into doing retreats. So the more support we have on Patreon, the more support we have on just, if you want to make one-time donations on PayPal, the quicker we could begin to host these retreats, because they do require some financial planning, and the more resources we have, the better and cheaper for everyone involved, right? I'd like to do these retreats, and I'd like to make them as accessible to people as possible. And that could only happen if we have enough funding. Okay, so maybe I will rebrand or just make a, I'll have to sit down and think about this. Maybe I'll make another video in regards to Patreon and my plans with the retreats. But I'd have to obviously run through the finances, see how much it would cost, and I really want to make it as cheap as possible. I really want to see as many of you guys as possible being in the retreat, and so to make it as affordable as possible. And so yeah, so if you want to support this mission, this growing mission, I'm really feeling called for it now for some reason. Then you could make one-time donations on PayPal, or you could join the Patreon family. All the links are in the description. You can only love if you're joy. Love is the byproduct of joy, but also love is joy. So really, like, I know two statements contradict one another, but everything is a contradiction because everything is a paradox. Nevertheless, love equals happiness. When you're in a state of pure joy, you're love. You're liquid love. So, I will see you guys again. Until next time, may the force be with you.